Would you rather start a skincare brand or a brand that sells fashion?
Fashion. Let me ask you
Why?
a version of that question, a different version of that question though, because that's a good question. But I reckon I can beat you here. Would you rather have a skincare brand that does $100,000 a month, nets $5,000 profit, or would you rather own a
So
fashion
5%.
brand or a fashion brand that does 50,000 a month, nets, has a 10% margin on that? So you're making, actually, let's say 8%. You're making less right now, 8%. So eight grand on the fashion brand. Would you rather have a 100K skincare brand or a 50K fashion brand, and why?
I would rather, I don't know why those numbers are there, but I would rather the skincare brand because the LTV is higher and the
Hmm,
margins are probably better
fair.
too.
Well, how often can you product drop skincare? You have to then innovate and reformulate it like every 6 to 12 months, which is pretty annoying. You're in the most competitive industry. It costs way more to acquire a customer. So growing
That's
is
true.
just a pain. Yeah, that's why I was trying to make it more difficult with skin with that one and making it higher revenue. I would go fashion because fashion you can drop 4 times for every season. Plus you can do additional limited edition drops. There's no loyalty in fashion, but skincare most women will be very loyal to a brand once they find it. Well, that's why the LTV is so good. But fashion, the loyalty is so low. People go to a different brand very easily. Um, I think you can get high LTV out of it, easier to create products too. You just got to get a designer, someone that's interested in design, to be on top of it. So that's why I think you could grow a
Well, I
fashion
mean,
brand faster.
I appreciate the point of like the frequency of drops. Like some of the brands that we're working with, they're dropping. I mean, look at Sheen for example, right? Like they're dropping almost once a week, right? It's like that's you can't do that in skincare.
No, you definitely cannot do that. It's very difficult. You have to formulate. I mean, we know how much it costs. It costs like 40 grand, or not 40 grand, maybe 20 grand to like formulate something of your own. So like, it is not a cheap practice. But if you get it right, you got some pretty good margins there to deal with. So definitely can make both work. But on that topic, Tristan, we are doing a brand breakdown today, and we want to talk about an Australian brand that we both sort of have been seeing all over our Instagrams or TikToks. This is a very respectable entrepreneur, same age as us, maybe a touch older. Um, Definitely someone to look out for in the e-commerce world, and someone we just want to pay our respects to, really, as someone that's just kind of succeeding. If I could suck up any more to this person, I probably would. But basically, what I'm saying is that the brand that we want to talk about today is no other than TBH Skincare. Which, have you seen these guys, Tristan? Have you seen these
I have.
guys?
In fact, I have because in fact you actually mentioned that we're going to deep dive TBH skincare today, so I have seen them. But even before that, I did see them on TikTok and stuff. So I mean, I
Yeah,
know.
that's
I mean,
right.
after doing the
So
deep dive today, this lag is horrible, dude.
go on. No, you're right. Go on.
um, Even after doing the deep dive today, I learned so much more about this brand. Also, the parent company, York Street Brands, which obviously, I mean, as we're about to jump into a bit more, it is one of those. I mean, it's not a conglomerate yet, I don't think, but it's definitely a like amalgamation of a bunch of brands or two brands at the moment who play in very similar spaces, who are obviously run by very intelligent, smart operators. Right, we're going to jump into Craig, who's the CEO. Obviously, Rachel, who's somewhat the face of it. She's the head of marketing and obviously killing it. She's the young one that we mentioned. And obviously everything else behind it. We don't obviously have up to date numbers other than articles and stuff because obviously we're not connected to it in that way. But obviously we can sort of speculate on what they're sort of doing, what the plan is. What I wanted to jump first into, Gabe, before we get to it, let's say you're in that fashion space or skincare space we are just talking about, are you building a conglomerate or an amalgam? Are you bundling brands together, or are you pushing one brand to 100 million? What are you? What's your opinion on it?
If I were to get to 100 million, I would go down the one brand path, but that's on the contingency that it's showing me all the indicators that it can get to 100 million, meaning that it can
Yeah.
acquire customers affordably. It is got a high LTV and a high profit margin. If it ticks those boxes on top of uh, everything else that's important to a brand, um, I'm sticking to that brand. But in the meantime, maybe I'd be testing smaller brands. I think it's much easier to get a brand to 100 million than get 10 brands to 10 million, if that makes sense, because it's such a big level of difficulty to do that with products that don't succeed, don't tick all those boxes, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. So you're saying, just to recap, you're saying that you would rather have one brand doing 100 million than say two brands doing 50 million, or what are you thinking?
Correct. Yeah, my point being that it's easier to get one brand becoming sort of a unicorn in essence, hitting 100 million, that has a successful product versus trying to figure it out three or five or 10 times with, smaller brands. Because getting from 10 million to 100 million is all about distribution. Because if you're already doing 10 million, you've got a proven market fit, you've got some sort of level of operational advantage over other companies. You have the ability to scale, and all it is about now finding new markets and new products within that brand. So yeah, I think getting from 10 to 100 million is much easier than going from 0 to 1, or sorry, 0 to 10, I should say. So yeah, definitely getting one brand up there.
Well, I mean, on that same train of thought, I mean, we're talking about TBH Skin, which is a part of that York Street conglomerate thingamabob. Their whole thesis is obviously nail skincare, and then sort of invest and find more. So obviously, these guys are going down the different route. And if you look at York Street's website, and we were talking about this before, they have this sort of outlet. It's like, we are this essence, this brand that we stand for is basically, we've got these two figurehead brands, or at least one that's sort of killing it, one that's a little bit smaller, but still very much big in their space. And now we're going to build this team of obviously seasoned vets. I mean, we're going to jump into that leadership team in a sec here, but like that team of people who know their stuff, and then basically their entire job, or at least from the outside looking in, is let's go find more brands that we can put into our system, that we can put through this machine that we've built, and spit out a 50 to $100 million brand at the end of this. Because we know the infrastructure, we know the operations, we know skincare, we know the logistics, we know the law, like we know all these things, we know the marketing, we know what actually is needed to make these brands pop off. So now they're just trying to find opportunities where it's like, hey, you've done all the heavy lifting, you've already gotten the brand from 0 to 1. We want to take it from 1 to 100, and like, I think that's a fantastic business model.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I think it's interesting you bring up the leadership team because I think that's the main reason for this merger is that they had, like, you could see the leadership team, they had expertise in skincare, product development, operations, and you could see like the CEO, Craig, what's the name? If we try pronouncing that name, is basically this seasoned vet in this e-commerce world. Um, and then they're bringing in this marketer, this young 27-year-old. And I think why they did that is because, we got these older guys that aren't as attuned to the new market of social media and digital marketing for e-commerce brands. And then they got this young girl who is, she's pretty, she's able to speak on camera, she's good at storytelling, she's able to market. Like that is just like the golden combination of differentiating yourself and easily one of the most competitive fields. Beauty and skincare is just unbelievably competitive. It is so easy to start a brand in that world. The barrier to entry is so low. You don't have to put that much capital down to get into it. So I think that's why they did it because she has a skill set and an unfair advantage in what would be one of the most important things for a new brand coming up, which is marketing. So I think that's why they did that acquisition outside of just trying to build one brand.
I mean, they've got the system now in place where they just have to plug in, obviously, their machine and let it run. I mean, we were talking about it before as well. The untapped potential of a brand that's going to get, let's say, $5 to $10 million in revenue a year from organic sales, like that's unpaid sales. That's just almost like an unfair advantage compared to brands like that we have obviously direct relations to, which are just pay to win, right? They're just running the ads. They sure have an organic presence, but they're not generating millions of dollars from revenue in that organic presence. This brand just obviously has just a complete leg up when it comes to retention, when it comes to acquisition costs, right? They can spend almost double the amount of money that a brand that doesn't have the organic can when they're looking to scale. And it's just obviously a proven formula at this point.
Absolutely. What do you think some of the lessons are for brands listening to this that they can take away looking at a success story like TBH, who is, again, in such a competitive industry, but able to even now see success amongst a lot of skincare brands that probably aren't seeing that level of success? What do you think some of the key takeaways are there?
I reckon it's the uniqueness of the brand. Like we were sitting there, we're looking at the account, right, or the website, and we're like, this just looks like every other brand. But then when you jump in and deep dive a little bit further, you can actually see that there's a different angle. Like it's like the scientifically proven sort of stuff. They've got that sort of comedic value on their TikTok account. Like they've gone a little bit different. Like they haven't reinvented the wheel by any means. Like they aren't changing the status quo. But what they are doing is they're going, look, we've got a product that no one else can replicate, or at least for the time being. We've formulated this. We know our product works. So obviously, they're hinging it on the fact that they've done the market research. And then from there, all they've done is just storytell, right? Like they're actually positioning the brand in a community which their customers are sitting there going, oh, I can actually get behind this, as opposed to just another regular black and white brand that's on a freaking beige marble background, and that's what they're pushing. Like it's just different slightly.
I'd like to add to that. So there's a couple observations. One, if you go on their website and look at their price point, you'll notice that compared to most people in the market, they've actually gone for a lower price point. Um, they're pushing their bundles, which is where they clearly drive most of their revenue from, because they have like the thousands of reviews coming there. But if you look at the individual SKUs, they're priced at a much lower rate than what you'll usually see a serum or cleanser priced at. So that's interesting. So they're sacrificing margin for acquisition, and maybe they did that intentionally. Um, the other thing I've noticed, I agree, they've done some clever naming and they've added humor to it. For instance, like the "Sorry I'm Busy" terry cloth headband, like that's obviously they've gone down that humor route, which is awesome. But on the social media side, the one thing that I've noticed is that the owner, the Rachel girl, the marketer, is almost in every single video, meaning that she's almost turned this into sort of a personal brand related channel. Like it is all her in interviews and talking about it. Like maybe one in five or six are different, and so I feel like that familiarity in the face is kind of turning this more into a personal brand vibe versus a commercial brand, like any of the like the Paula skincare and everything. And that's people are buying from her instead of just buying a product.
I agree. I mean, think about other brands. Like we were talking about Fate the Label before as well. Like she's positioned her brand around her personal brand, and then when people buy, they go, "I'm buying from Brittany, whatever her name is." So, I mean, this is another point of difference that you're
Rachel.
mentioning. I think Rachel, I mean, the whole position from this brand is that, as you said, it's different, but as you again, like the positioning of the brand is just it's slightly cheaper. It's obviously coming from the personal aspect, and they've just sort of added that humor or storytelling to it, which obviously the big brands like the Sheens of the world or the Myers of the world, they just have no capability of doing because they're just faceless organizations. And this brand's doing it different, which I respect.
Yeah, I heard something recently on this, and it's like if you're going to be a direct to consumer, that means that customers are going to have to wait longer for your product and spend more on your product than what is currently out there. And the only advantage you really have is the customer experience. People have to want to pay more for you knowing that they're going to get a better experience, whether that be product quality or the buying journey. So the only way to really compete in these industries is do what this company is just a perfect example of, is just giving these micro levels of difference that you don't get in Coles or in Priceline and all these items where you buy skincare from alternatively. So I think the lesson here is like just really double down on customer experience in whatever way that is. I mean, you can clearly see that this is the kind of owner that's going to trade shows and doing pop-ups and just giving a phenomenal sort of customer first experience with the brand, and that's causing word of mouth. That I don't think this is just a I'm running Facebook ads and that's what's driving my brand growth. I think they're doing small things consistently well that's leading to this word of mouth uh, level of growth and credibility that's causing this to have success, which I think is a good lesson for us with our brands and with brands listening on what they need to do, like to differentiate themselves. I think it's such a good point you bring up against Walmarts and the Amazons of the world, giving that level. So yeah, big lesson right there.
Yeah, I mean, coming from the bootstrapping, right? Like, obviously, she was in part of it when they were getting from 10,000 to $100,000 in revenue. She probably, and I wouldn't be surprised if it comes out in a few years that she was responsible for every single trade show they went to, or she was responsible for every single video they made, and she edited it on her phone. Like, I would not be surprised if that's what's coming out in podcasts that she's doing, things like that, because it's just as you said, it's guerrilla marketing, right? Like it's guerrilla marketing 101, which I mean, the CEO of Virgin, Richard Branson, when he used to do it back in the day, like that was exactly what he did. He made it worthwhile talking about, and she's doing the exact same thing, just in the modern times. But as you said, she's also creating a very good community and customer experience because, again, the price is a little bit cheaper. They're probably getting got a lot of value out of the product that they're buying because they are paying a little bit less for it versus the mechas and the things of the world. And ultimately, she's built this community of people that are wanting to be a part of the product or wanting to get that value because they want to feel part of something even bigger, which she's nailing.
I think here, let me pose you the question to sort of sign this off. What do you think the biggest takeaway is here for brands listening that they can implement for themselves? Because they're probably thinking, okay, this is great. Like, I understand I've got to be doing guerrilla marketing. I have to be trying to put myself out there. And I can need a hustle. But what does that look like for a brand who might be, they might have kids, they might have a job, they might be working full time still. What does that look like for them that don't have a huge amount of time or capital to invest but want to get themselves out there to that $1 million mark within a few years?
I mean, the tactical takeaway from what she's doing right now is purely coming down from the perspective of knowing her market, being true to what the brand stands for, and then just sort of doing lots of it. Like as you said, she's in every video. Their marketing department at TBH Skincare is probably close to 10 to 15 people by this point, right? Whether they be offshore or in house, like they are probably a pretty thick team right now. And she's still a part of every video. I reckon that mentality she's got right now, she's kept through all the way from the beginning. Just putting content out that's true to form or true to brand, and then just hoping that obviously by perspective of actually doing that, people are going to want to pay attention to it. So I mean, the tactical takeaway is understand what your brand stands for. Trial and error. Like I bet you she didn't get it right first go. Whoever was in charge the first go, but ultimately once they found that what was winning, she's just now just doubling down and she's becoming a storyteller, right? Like the Barbie thing that she did where she walked around pretending to be Margot Robbie. That went viral on the precedent that it was a funny story to tell and people were interested in what she was painting, right? Like the most recent one where she dressed up as a freaking skincare bottle and walked around in Coles because that was to promote the fact that they're now in Coles. Like that's a fantastic marketing ploy. She knows what's happening and she knows what goes viral. I mean, the tactical takeaway is just paint pictures of storytelling that allows people to buy into it.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, on that beautiful note, we're going to end it there, Tristan. But I enjoyed that one. And next time,
Very good.
we're going to talk about a brand that we are unaware of what that brand's going to be yet because we're not that organized. But we will have an interesting brand next time.
Very
And we
good.
will be
Thank you,
more
sir.
organized next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, mate.